Hello and welcome to Mr. Red Dragon 543. And I wanted to talk to you guys about my experience with therapy and why it hasn't been so helpful. So, a lot of reasons why I'm in therapy is because of the fact that one, a few years ago, I almost had a successful suicide attempt. This was due to a huge amount of issues at the time. And so what happened was, uh, for those of the for those of you who don't know, um, I pretty much electrocuted myself to the point that my heart rate went over 188 BPM. For those who don't know, uh, usually that's like when your heart goes over a certain limit, like I believe 140 or even over 120 can seem very high risk. But usually that's around the heart attack rate, which is very dangerous. And if your heart reaches around 220 or higher BPM, your heart can actually explode, which is very bad. So, when I was in therapy, uh, a lot of the reasons why I find that it's failing is because, one, a lot of the examples that they are using for uh like trying to cope with stuff, like their examples seem very childlike. For instance, like one of the examples they used for a situation for behave like confrontation was somebody stole something from a their cart at a grocery store, and that was the example they used. And it seems very fucking childish that they use an example that wouldn't apply for everyone or most people in general, because you think that like with therapy, they would use a more better example that can apply for most people. And so when I was also in therapy, because here's the thing is, I took CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy, and then I'm on an application for DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy, and then I've also had a therapist for 3 years. Uh, she just can she what was it, discharged me so I can get into DBT because of how the hospitals are working now, which is strange. But pretty much what happened was, it seems that there's a lot of things that they don't quite understand, nor do they know how to actually deal with stuff themselves. A lot of the things too that I found with CBT is there's a book that they gave you for the session. The book is full of questions, but not all the questions are properly specified. And so the problem begins where you have to be in the session just to understand the question. And so this really renders the book useless if you're trying to use it at home. And so because of this, it is very difficult to kind of work with, right? So another thing that I find that therapy itself struggles with is human behavior in general, and like the struggles of conflict within people, because the truth is everyone has a limit. Some people are much more patient than others, as others have short fuses. It is how it is, you know. But it seems like they have this weird idea in place that like everyone can control themselves interactions like 100%, which is definitely not the case because at most times when you're put in a difficult position, you tend to lose reason and go off instinct. And so that's when everything becomes fight or flight, right? So, for instance, uh, if somebody, you know, for instance, right, when you're walking on ice, right, you know it's slippery, but at the same time, you try to be cautious, but that doesn't mean you're not going to slip. But sometimes when you slip, you sometimes have the urge to grab something that's close by, or you just completely fall, right? So sometimes that happens. Or another good example is like sports when it comes to the whole reaction thing, right? Because there's always some people that are just like very deer in the headlights, and then there's people that are just reaction, right? Um, but another thing to note because with the whole instinct, right? Environments do play a huge part on people's upbringings. Some people are raised in very highly tensed areas where conflicts happen quite a lot of time, and so they can wind up becoming very aggressive, not because they want to be, but because that's their means of survival, right? So sometimes people mistaken that aggression as, you know, them wanting to fight when it's just more of them trying to survive, so conflict happens, right? And then you obviously have some other people who are just pure ignorant and just want to fight because they want to fight. You can't really help those people too much because, I mean, if they enjoy it to the point that it gives them a thrill, who's to say that they won't stop, right? So it's definitely one of those things like but when it comes to therapy though, uh another thing too is like because of the whole emotion thing, it also leads to a lot of other issues because like some of their advice seems very impractical. Like, you know, everyone knows about the breathe in, breathe out, and stuff like that, and just try to close your eyes and stuff. But like, when it comes to real situations, a lot of people don't slow down to think because sometimes things get heated, right? You know, let's say for instance, people who are working in a fast-paced job, and I'm saying fast-paced job where everything has to be done so quick that it is hard to slow down. And if you slow down, everything stops, and then all of a sudden you got everyone looking at you, being like, "Hey, hurry the fuck up," right? And so you got all this tension and stress, and you can only handle so much before you snap, whether it be emotionally or physically, because of the human limits, right? So if therapy brought into that, you know, the limits, it would be more, I guess, it would be more better and healthier for them to actually try to work with limitations of how much people can take before they, you know, have a snap, right? And so the reason why I think this is something that a lot of therapists should be talking about is because the fact that a lot of their stuff seems, like I said, seems very childish in nature. Like when it comes to using examples like, oh, Barbara stole my Ritz crackers out of my shopping cart after I bought them. It's like what kind of fucking example is that? Like I'm going to tell you something. When I was in foster care, me and my foster brother had a fight. He tried to push me down the stairs, and then I chased him through the house, and eventually, when he was walking down the stairs, he turned around to look at me, and I kicked him in the mouth. Now, because of that, my foster mom called the cops on me for some reason, even though, like, he pushed me down the stairs and shit. It was fucking stupid. So, what wound up happening is I just went to school that morning, and for some stupid reason, they thought that I went through the window, and, like, I was a fucking fat kid. And, like, through my window, they thought I went down a skinny pipe. And everyone was kind of making fun of my foster mom for that. They're like, how the fuck are you this stupid? Like, it's just really, like, face palm. Like, how the fuck is this bitch really that dumb? But, anyways, when I went to school, the cops came to the school to have a word with me because obviously, me and my foster brother had a scuffle. And what was interesting is cop went to talk with me and he asked me, he's like, so what happened? How did this all start? I explained to him, like, I was, walking down the stairs and my foster brother pushed me and I fell. And then eventually it got to the point where I kicked him in the face. And so the officer, understood that, yeah, this happened. And he looked at me, he goes, there are many times I get into scuffles and stuff with people. And there are times where I want to lose my shit. But I have to hold myself back because I know that I have so much responsibility. And it was interesting hearing that perspective for sure. Because it's like, oh, the fact that, like, he was being real. Like, he's not trying to hold back this bullshit of, like, oh, you gotta be good, you gotta be, you gotta be stronger than that. But, like, hearing, him say, like, no, there's times where I feel like beating the shit out of people, but I don't because, I have to be responsible. That was a real moment. And I think that's the kind of things that therapy should learn to kind of, I guess, try to kind of convey in their programs, because if they use the more realistic approaches, it's more easier for people to kind of find easier coping situations. Sometimes a lot of people have struggles when it comes to, conflicts, right? A lot of people have older brothers or sisters or, like very abusive families. And sometimes it's just a matter of learning how to communicate in such a way that the environment is a lot more calmer. Because as much as people want to say, like, oh, just leave the person because of their toxic behavior, the problem is everyone has toxicity. Everyone is toxic to a degree. However, the degree in which they're toxic stems from also how they're being treated by you as well. Not everything is just given. There is a give and receive kind of thing, or give and take, whatever. But, it's like, if I were to, talk to you in a manner of, like, making fun of you and shit, obviously I'm going to expect you to make fun of me. There's no doubt about that. But if I'm just, but if I decide, like, to actually harm you in a way where it's just unacceptable, then you know that obviously there's a lot more issues because it's like, what the fuck? But obviously, a lot of problems also stem from the fact that, a lot of people don't want to accept responsibility, nor have they been properly taught how to, They've been always taught that it's always the other person's fault. They cannot do wrong if the other person is at fault, right? But the truth is, it's like every action has a reaction, right? And if you react in a negative manner, you're obviously adding to a situation as well, which is just as more dangerous because it's like, oh shit. And especially when it comes to online stuff, like I'm going to say this: if you need to vent, do not vent online, because people will definitely take that out of context and will probably start harassment campaigns and stupid shit against you, just for obvious stupid reasons, right? Because that's how a lot of people are on the internet. They love to fuck with you if you show resemblance of vulnerability to that degree. Let's be fair. Uh, but when it also comes to therapy, there's also like because when we were learning about it, right? A lot of the weird thing about the therapy was like learning, like definitely with like the communication things. There was like it was very bizarre because it's like, oh, if somebody says thank you, or no, one of the things that I thought was very bizarre was if somebody apologizes, just accept it. And I thought that was very strange in therapy that they taught that, because it's like sometimes you want to know why somebody did something. It's not as simple as apologizing. Sometimes you want to know why somebody did something so you can prevent that same thing from happening again. You know what I mean? And I found that very irresponsible for them to do that in a way, because it's like, yeah, you can apologize, but are they truly sorry if you're just going to let them do it again? And so it's this weird problem that they're kind of promoting this like irresponsibility at this weird same time, like, oh, if they say sorry, just move on and accept it. But it's like, oh, that's not good. I even called them out in it, and they kind of just looked at me and they're like, don't ask questions, just accept it. It was very bizarre. And like I said, this is in CBT therapy. You can't tell me, like, like, obviously if something happens, right, sometimes things are out of your control. People want to know what the hell happened. Like, let's say for instance, right, you have to pick up somebody from work, and on your way to pick them up, construction happens on the road, or, there's an accident, so it prevents you from picking them up on time, right? Some things are out of your control, so you call them up or something, or if you don't call them up, that might be a lot more different too, because not everybody carries a phone on them, because not everyone can afford to do so. And I think this is a thing that a lot of people also forget, is not everybody has the luxuries to technology and to resources that a lot of people may have access to, which is also like a lot of the stuff I have is probably well over 10 years old, and a lot of it was given to me through CAS from like school and stuff, and like other stuff. But like it's more of a means of like the the stuff that I have is important for emailing, making appointments, and stuff like that. And it's kind of sad how we're so dependent on technology that you need it to survive, but yet it's so expensive too at the same time. You know, and it's kind of dumb how, with a lot of social pressure, a lot of people are expected to have a social media account just so the boss can keep tabs on you, which is very fucking strange. Um, you know, and another thing that I find too is when it comes to these situations, I think it's important to say that like a lot of mental health is probably caused by just like the whole vibe of this generation as well, and plus the past decade alone. It hasn't been a healthy decade for sure, you know. And I'm not just talking about the States, like, I'm talking about all over the world. Like, this has been probably the most unhealthiest decade worldwide, you know. And so, when it comes to this whole therapy thing, like, I kind of wish that, one, they're able to kind of provide more measures, and two, like, because obviously there's some people like myself who are medicated for trying to at least slow down my thoughts, because like my brain is always on, which is very weird to say, but it's like it's kind of like a motor engine. It's like it's always on, and so sometimes I I was diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, and my therapist said that because I had it as a kid, it may be why I have anxiety now. And I was like confused. I was like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, a lot of anxiety is caused through having ADHD as a kid. I'm like, what the fuck? I've never heard of that before. But anyways, um, I'm, I'm probably very confusing right now because I'm jumping from like topic to topic and stuff like that, and I do probably have a bad habit of doing that. But I mean, it's all connected in some way or form, because I mean we kind of loop back to the therapy, right? But but I want to say though is people who are struggling mentally and even physically, I think the best thing for yourselves, especially if you are attending therapy, don't be afraid to ask questions that you may need answers for, Put them on spot, because that's their job to help you. Don't be afraid to ask uncomfortable questions, because at the end of the day, they are medically supposed to be trained anyways to answer those questions, There there's a lot of things in therapy that happens, like, but at the same time it doesn't help that they're very what is it, like the way that they speak to you is like more like they're just listening, and then whenever you ask them something, they'll just give us brief explanation and not like a full like understanding of what's going on. So it could be frustrating. So yeah, a lot of it is just down to communication and stuff. But yeah, I don't know if I got everything fully out of my way, but I mean, it's most of what my experience with therapy is like. And so, if you had a similar vein of experience, don't be afraid to share it. But that's the end of the video for now. This is Mr. Red Dragon 543. And you guys have a good night and early morning and a good day and a... Don't get too drunk, okay? I know it's your birthday, but I mean, don't get too drunk, okay? I've seen some really stupid shit that people do when they're drunk on their birthday. Don't be that stupid drunk, okay? I want you safe and not too stupid, okay? You can be a little stupid, but don't be hurting yourself and hurting your friends stupid, okay? You guys have a great day.